We don't need anything from Canada, and yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that.
Now, the frequency of Trump's Canada comments have raised international concern. Prime Minister Mark Carney said his first international trip was to strengthen ties with reliable allies, making stops in France and the United Kingdom earlier this week, where Prime Minister Keir Starmer described Canada and the UK as two sovereign allies, but stopped short of directly calling out President Trump. As the world adjusts to the new U.S. leader, I spoke to the UK's High Commissioner to Ottawa about where the Canada-UK relationship stands. Rob Tinline is the British High Commissioner to Canada, and he joins me now. High Commissioner, it's good to meet you. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Dan.
You've picked a remarkable time to start your stint in Canada. It's been nothing but change and political frenzy since you showed up.
It's been quite the time to arrive. So I've been here 4 weeks. I've been to Toronto, I've been to Montreal, I've been to Quebec, I've been to Charlevoix. We've had 2 Canadian Prime Ministers visit London. We've had a Canadian Foreign Minister in London. We've had our Foreign Minister here. It's been quite the time.
Well, let's start with the conversation between the current Prime Minister of Canada and Prime Minister Starmer that happened in London. In the advance of that meeting, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, spoke to my colleague Catherine Cullen. He was asked about the U.S. threats on Canadian sovereignty, and he said now is not the time to sow unnecessary division in terms of weighing in and backing Canada on this. Has anything changed now that the Prime Ministers have had a chance to sit down?
So look, we've been really clear. Canada is a sovereign, independent country, and it's going to remain so. Every Canadian I've met has been very, very clear about that. Mm-hmm. So look, the Prime Ministers met, obviously the Foreign Ministers met a week ago. I was there in London when the Prime Ministers met. I think Keir Starmer's been very clear, David Lammy's been very clear. Canada is a sovereign country with whom we have a great partnership which we want to take to the next level.
Do you feel, though, Canadians may be looking for a more emphatic statement than merely recognizing the sovereignty, a statement directed maybe at the United States, you know, which, and I appreciate the difficult spot this puts countries in because you don't want to unnecessarily put yourself in the crosshairs of this administration. But do you sense that there is an appetite in Canada for stronger declarations for our historical allies?
We've been pretty clear. A sovereign country, it's going to remain that way. That's where we are. What I hear from everybody I meet is that desire to take the relationship to another level, how we can work together better on trade, on investment, on security, on all those big global challenges. So I'm not hearing any desire to do less with the UK. I'm hearing a great desire to do more with the UK and where we can go next.
Well, let's talk a little bit about trade, because the United States has hit your steel industry with tariffs, like it's hit Canada's with tariffs. We've retaliated as a country. The UK hasn't immediately done reciprocal tariffs. Why take that stance versus what Canada, for example, has decided to do? What's the calculation there for your country?
So we've decided to take a bit of time, talk to the US. Our Trade Secretary was out there this week talking to the US, working out how we can go forward. So for the moment, we haven't taken anything off the table, but we're still talking to the US about where they're going to go, where we want to go, and how we can get the best possible relationship with the US that serves our economic interests as well as whatever the US are trying to achieve.
Does the UK have the same understanding of what happens with April 2nd and the days beyond that Canada has articulated, that they're going to be global, and then the negotiation begins to try to reduce the tariffs country by country, sector by sector? This is the way our leadership emerged from a meeting with Howard Lutnick on it. Is that the United Kingdom's understanding?
I'll let the US talk about what's going to happen on April the 2nd and what's going to influence their thinking and how they want to take it forward. But for us, as I say, we had our Trade Secretary in Washington this week talking to the US about how we can go forward. We've got that dialogue with the US. We'll keep it going and obviously trying to bring it to a conclusion that works for us.
Well, what about the trade relationship with Canada? Because I know there have been various attempts at expanding the Canada-UK trade relationship. I know dairy access was an issue when things were stalled, and that was complicated by the decision to leave the European Union. With the change here to look for new markets, what's your sense of where those talks could be between Canada and the United Kingdom?
So we've got a trade deal, and obviously we're looking forward to joining, to Canada ratifying our accession to the CPTPP Pacific trade deal as well. So most of our trade, the overwhelming majority of our trade is already covered. Obviously we were talking about another deal to take that even further. That got paused a year or so ago. Once we get through a Canadian election, which I think we all expect at some point imminently,
maybe this weekend,
then I think that will be a moment for the government after the election in Canada and the government in the UK to sit down and think about where we go next on that. But a lot of this comes down to actually helping businesses really take advantage of the rules, the deals that are in place, and really try and uplift that. So one of my priorities here, and the priority for my team, is trying to make sure we're making those connections between Canadian business, UK business, really to try and lift the trade and investment relationship still further within the existing framework that we've got.
There has been a lot of call for diversification, just lessening reliance on the U.S. market, even before all of this latest stuff. But it's been difficult to get Canadian businesses to expand into the markets, even with the free trade deals. The CETA deal is largely in effect, but it hasn't really moved the needle dramatically on trade. I mean, what are the obstacles you see in getting Canadian businesses to deepen ties with the United Kingdom and vice versa?
Look, there are some fantastic Canadian businesses that are doing it. Obviously, the amount of investment that comes in from Canadian pension funds and other Canadian investments into the UK is really significant, tens of billions. They look very internationally. And Air Canada is starting a direct flight from Ottawa this month, which is fantastic news. So there are businesses that are doing this. There's lots of businesses doing this. But it's a common challenge. We have it in the UK as well, helping businesses look internationally, think internationally. Yeah, it can be daunting. So that's what we do. For UK businesses seeking to export into Canada, Canadian businesses seeking to invest in the UK, that's where governments can really help make it easier, show that route for businesses to do more.
One of the challenges will be aligning climate policy going forward and the impact that has on trade because of carbon border adjustments. Your country, I believe, is January of 2027 is the target for the UK to have one in place. Industrial carbon pricing is on the agenda in this election. I'm not asking you to weigh in on the policies there because I don't want to get you fired a month into your job. But if Canada does move away from pricing, because consumer carbon pricing is not going to survive this election no matter who wins, it seems. Industrial pricing, it's an open question. Does that complicate the ability to expand trade if you're going to put a carbon tariff at the border in the United Kingdom, and if Canada should move away from that? What are the implications there on the trade relationship?
So you're right. The carbon border adjustment mechanism, we're looking at bringing it in 2027. So we're currently in the phase of listening to business, talking to business, understanding what that means, and how we design that mechanism to work. The EU's doing something similar. It's focused on heavy industries, the industries that use most carbon. So it's a long way away from a consumer carbon price. It's about trying to. We've set an ambitious target on net zero, and we at Baku, at the latest COP, we set 81% reductions on 1990 levels by 2035. That's an ambitious target. What we don't want to do is simply see that industry leave the UK as a way of getting down there. So what carbon border adjustments are there to do is to try and make that a level playing field, not to disadvantage businesses outside the UK, but to create a level playing field so that we're not simply meeting our net zero ambitions by having heavy industry move out of the UK. Now, exactly how that works, we're still working it through, and it's 2 years until it will come in. So there's lots more to be done, and that conversation will be one that no doubt we'll be having with the Canadian government after the election.
But it seems in some form, countries, whether it's Canada or others, that do not have carbon pricing mechanisms in their economy, they would face a tariff wall to get into the United Kingdom market if they tried to get their goods there. This would be the net result of this if you go ahead with your border adjustment.
So it's a way of creating a level playing field on carbon pricing within the UK. How that works, we're still designing.
Right.
We're still listening to business about how that operates. But yes, we're looking to create a level playing field so that we're not simply meeting our net zero goals by moving emissions overseas.
Yeah, you want to give them an incentive to clean up their emission profile inside your country by not having them undercut by other products coming in.
It's about creating a level playing field. Yeah.
No, understood. So one of the other things that's going on just between our country and Europe, our country and the United Kingdom, is a new defense relationship of some sort in terms of working together on procurement and supplying each other because of the changing relationship with the United States. Yeah. How do you see the United Kingdom and Canada working together on that one, High Commissioner?
So look, We've announced we're going to move to 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2027, and then seek to go higher than that. So there's a lot of new investment going in into our defence industry and to our armed forces. You're seeing that across Europe as well, and obviously you're seeing the parties here talk about that in terms of the plans for Canada. How we then deliver that is a challenge for all of us. In terms of stepping up the defence production, stepping up defence industry. So there's a huge opportunity for us all to work together across NATO, but bilaterally as well, to really make sure we can use that money well and get our industries working together so that we are getting the equipment that we need as fast as we can. And there's a great deal of work that we do with Canada on that already. You'll have seen the contract go out for destroyers. The UK companies are working very closely with the Canadian contractor on that to make sure Canada is getting the destroyers it needs, built in Canada, but pulling in UK expertise as well. And that's the sort of thing we need going forward.
But just as a final point, if there is a desire, because some of this here is being motivated by moving away from reliance on the United States, and I know that is also a factor in Europe, is the industrial capacity there to do it at scale and at speed? Because of the defense of Ukraine, the rearming of the European Union. I know the United Kingdom and the Baltic nations and Poland well ahead in their spending. Everyone else has got to do a lot of catching up. I mean, is the industrial capacity there, in your view, without the United States to do it at the speed required?
Part of the challenge we face is to step up that industrial capacity. Yeah, we face it in Canada, face it in the UK, face it across Europe. Part of that challenge is how we step up that industrial capacity, and that's one of the things the government's focused on in the UK and across Europe as well.
Hi, Commissioner. It's good to meet you. Thank you for coming in today.
Very good to see you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it.